Hello, I'm Ila Sharavinsky and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Ukraine has been pushing back against Russian aggression for quite a while now, but it is facing many of the same issues, including the question of long-range missiles. Will it be able to use them against Russian targets in Russia itself? That remains an open question, which perhaps might be answered following the visit of Antony, Blinken and David Lammy to Kiev. Meanwhile, there are also reports that Ukraine might be losing grounds in the Kursk region, into which it has made a daring incursion a couple of weeks ago. All this and more we're going to discuss with our guest today, Mikhail Alexseev, professor at the San Diego State University. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good to be with you.
So let us begin with the Kursk region, actually. What do you make of the recent reports that Russians might be mounting what some term to be a counter-offensive? They're at least striking back against Ukrainian forces. This much we know. Could this mean that Ukraine's idea to create what they refer to as an insurance policy might actually fail?
Well, it was to be expected that Russia would amass some troops and mount an effort to push the Ukrainian forces out of the Kursk region. But according to the reports, the problem that Ukraine faces now there is that Russia was able to put some pontoon bridges across the river Seine, where Ukrainians destroyed the bridges to prevent Russia amassing forces. However, it also appears that Ukrainians are quite effectively knocking out those pontoon bridges, and so there may be only 2 or 3 of them operational, and how long they would last is also unclear. So there's also a group of Russian forces that is virtually surrounded there, and Ukraine has still quite a few advantages. Plus, overall, Russia would probably need more forces than it has put there now to mount a significant push, and that may require them to take forces from other fronts.
So the river crossing is going to be a major bottleneck. Meanwhile, Ukraine is facing a bottleneck in the form of restrictions on the use of Western weapons. Do you think this is going to change? One argument that was given in favor of the theory that this is going to change is that Russia has taken delivery of Iranian missiles, which could be termed an escalatory move.
Yes, I actually do sense that Ukraine will get permission. I don't think it will be a blanket permission. I think it would be a qualified one. I believe that this is the reason why we have such intense negotiations and detailed negotiations, such as the ones going on in Kiev with the Foreign Secretary of Great Britain and U.S. Secretary Blinken. Also, we have this. I have this understanding that there may be some changes politically, because it was the Los Angeles Times editors who asked me to write a story on Kursk, in which I argued for extending the range where Ukraine can hit and lifting the restrictions. And it was interesting because usually you submit an op-ed piece to the paper, but this time the editors asked. And so my sense is that there may be some perception that there is going to be some change in that sphere.
So hopefully it might be the case, because this was one of the arguments advanced against the current administration, that they are not doing enough. We also have a discussion concerning what Ukraine should really present to the West. President Zelensky is about to present what he refers to as the victory plan, and he will be presenting that to President Joe Biden, but also to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Some have argued that Ukraine should scale down its expectations for military victories. Do you think that this is correct, or should Ukraine stick to their guns and push for a full victory compliant with the provisions of international law, so taking back all their territory?
Well, you know, we cannot look at it in a straightforward manner as if some pieces of territory can be bargaining chips, because the objective of Russia, of Putin, is to subjugate entire Ukraine. We have seen that they keep doubling up on every effort possible. The shipment of missiles from Iran is just another indication of that. And so the question for Ukraine and for us in the West who support Ukraine is, if we agree to some kind of partial plan for pushing out, for example, some Russian forces out, then starting some peace negotiations, then the problem would be that it would still be a victory for Russia. Russia may use it as a tactical retreat and then attack further, as they did after Donbass and Minsk Accords. And so there will never be, in essence, a resolution of the issue.
They would feel emboldened, effectively, right?
In fact, it would. And if you analyze the behavior of challenges to the international order going back several centuries, which I have done back many years for my dissertation, they do pay particularly strong attention to political indicators, to indicators of resolve. And one thing that Ukraine achieved with Kursk was that it staged that kind of operational and strategic surprise. And that is another reason why it's important right now, as soon as possible, to give Ukraine the more opportunity to use longer range weapons, because it enhances the surprise. It's not just knocking out specific targets. It's sending the message about intention. If anything is to end the war, it will be more bold measures like this.
And we have very different signals from world leaders. We had recently German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying that there has to be a peace conference and it has to involve Russia. On the other hand, we had the leader of Turkey, Tayyip Recep Erdogan, saying that Crimea absolutely has to return to Ukraine because this is what international law requires. What do you make of these two very interesting signals? What do they tell us about the current state of the discourse on Ukraine, on the international arena?
Well, broadly speaking, these statements mean that domestic political considerations matter in foreign policy. If you think of German statements, I somehow think that they do have something to do with the successful performance of the far-right AfD party in Eastern Germany, and Scholz to position himself kind of more to the center. He doesn't want to maybe make that issue of aid to Ukraine too political. He wants to say that, well, we pursue different options, you know, we're not just hawks. So that is a part, could be part of domestic political maneuvering very well. For Erdogan, we know that his base of support in Turkey is nationalist electorate, and therefore support for Crimean Tartars in Crimea is one of those issues that can raise his standing and his rating among his base. So we have these kinds of developments there.
And it is perhaps important that Crimean Tartars get mentioned because this, they argue that this has been something of a forgotten genocide. I mean, in Stalin's era, they were essentially removed from the peninsula. They were trying to return there. But after Russia has taken over again, it has been conducting this campaign of persecution.
Absolutely. The people of Crimea, who are actually the native people of Crimea, in many ways, the Crimean Tartars, they suffered tremendously, and they suffered some of the most egregious forms of oppression, which is mass deportation to faraway lands. And we know that these deportations were conducted in a very brutal manner, with a lot of people perishing en route or in those new places of settlement that were not fit for people who arrived there. It's an amazing long-term historical grievance. It's indeed a genocidal act. And so the repetition of this oppression of the Crimean Tartars is also egregious. And in fact, it dovetails with the Putin strategy of attacking Ukraine, which is basically to deny the very existence of the Ukrainian nation.
During the Philadelphia debate, former President Donald Trump refused to say whether he wants Ukraine to win. He simply said he wants the war to end. Should Ukrainians be worried?
Yes, it is a worrying statement. However, I think Trump is a very complicated personality. I don't think it's all black and white, that Harris means more support, Trump means less support for Ukraine. Harris means more stability, possibly increases because she may not be beholden to the same very cautious approach that Biden used. At the same time, Trump is very volatile. And so if he perceives that he may be a loser in that situation, that he may look weak, that Putin would, as Harris said, have him for lunch, then he may very abruptly change his policy and become even more supportive of Ukraine. So it's basically stability versus turbulence. That is how I see this juxtaposition. But also, I think an interesting thing about the debate is that both Harris and Trump, in essence, debated who can be stronger against Putin. They position themselves in different ways about it, but they both implicitly agreed that Putin needs to be defeated. And that, to me, was a very important take. And I think the Russian official response to the debate also illustrates that, when they said, we object to Putin being used in domestic political discussion.
Very much so. This was the statement that they have made, and it certainly does tell us something about the way that they are looking at things in this regard. Professor Mikhail Alexseev was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure.
And I'm Jonasz Rowiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.